Welcome to IG World Network, where we go around the world giving you the latest in the world of news. It is news for people, by people. It's been a while since we've had a chat with this gentleman. I would like to bring to you, viewers in the African continent, Mr. Adriaan Rudolph Fondse, who is being a regular guest in our show and who will be outlining number of challenges that we are facing currently in the world and we are facing in South Africa, to be precise. And without wasting much of your time, let me introduce the gentleman to you. Mr. Rudolph, welcome.
Thank you, Mandla, and thank you for IG Network to host this disclosure, because it's so important to try to put some facts straight, because it's well known across the globe that more than 80% of what we believe to be true through history and curriculums that has been taught from primary school throughout the university is totally false.
For our viewers that have not had an opportunity to engage you from the past interactions that we've had with you, who is Rudolph Fondse?
I've been born in the Orange Free State, and after my high school, I had to do military service, and then I was recruited by Special Forces. So yes, I was part of the Bush War, where a lot of disclosures came to me that was in conflict with my upbringing. I experienced that the wars are created for the beneficial interest of a very few. All of the wars was created by one faction, and that is coming out of the banking system.
Now, you have written a number of documents in the past, and you've written a number of writs. And maybe start explaining to us, what are the writs?
A writ is a legal administrative oversight process with authority to remedy, correct a judicial or a procedural act from omissions or execution and in records to an early date of record of filing in the world judicial process, having full legal rights and capacity to enforce that agreements must be kept in civil law and in international law, ensuring liberty of the people are preserved through the perseverance of law, which cannot be changed or moved because the UCC represent common law, natural law, or the Creator's law, and therefore it grandfathers all other law. And the principle in law applies that whoever is first in time enjoys preference. So the majority of the people across the globe believe in the Creator, whether from which denomination or not. So, and in terms of the creation, there's certain laws for society to progress and not be distracted.
Okay. Now, the question that arises now is a question that says, where does it get, obviously, its authority in order for it to be enforceable?
Well, first of all, as I said, whoever first in time enjoy preference, that is the first authority in all law. So the Creator's law is part of it. Natural law is referred to, and they are all sharing the same basis. Natural law is what is perceived that all societies across the globe will enforce the same kind of laws, like you may not steal and you may not murder. So, and it's common irrespective of what ideology it is in applied, whether it's so-called democratic or communist or socialist or whatever, it still applies everywhere. Yeah. And common law was a formulation of all these principles. So that is where the authority came from. If you look at the South African Constitution, in chapter 1 and 2, it specifically referred to common law as a foundation of what needs to be regulated in South Africa. So the authority is the Constitution of South Africa. Now you will ask who has got authority, because everyone will look at a judge or attorneys. In essence, everyone answers to the law, not to a judge, not to an advocate, and not to an attorney. It is a law. So, and in general, in all the application of law, they will always tell you, you could be forgiven for having the facts wrong, but you will not be forgiven for misinterpretation of the law.
Now, what I want us maybe to do and try and clarify is to obviously give the distinction between what can a judge, what can a citizen do. Because you are mentioning that the authority of writs, obviously, they come from the Constitution of the Republic itself. Now, let's come to the South African context to say the Constitution is the father of basically whatever that we are trying to do when we are issuing and writing these writs. So what is the procedure or the process now to be able to reach it to that? Because in this case, it will speak to the Constitutional Court, is that correct?
Not necessarily to the Constitutional Court. It speaks to all law and all application of law. And you'll see that in the process of me being appointed as a judge, it was on the request and also confirmation of a large group of the population in South Africa. It was also from the UCC as an international law organization. Now, if you need to understand the UCC stands for Universal Commercial Code, which is based on common law and natural law and the Creator's Law. That was formalized in its current form during 1952 by the National Conference of Commissioners of Uniform State Laws and the American Law Institute. So it's not a fly-by-night or a dream, a pipe dream. Yeah. It is something that exists, that's something that is real, and it's born out of the need to synchronize the interpretation of law across the boundaries of states.
Okay. You mentioned that you were appointed as a judge.
Yes.
Who appoints you? Who appointed you as a judge in this regard?
The UCC one.
The UCC one.
Yeah.
And appointed as a judge to do what, or to follow which matters, to be precise?
Well, in essence, to follow it is to bring law back to its original form. The law was made complicated by design so that the common people do not have access either to understanding the law or to have access of defending themselves. So if you simplify the ultimate law to a single sentence, it follows the following. You do not cause harm and you do not harm other people or the environment. Do not cause harm and do not harm. That's simple. And if you look at, for instance, the American Constitution, that is the basis of the whole Constitution. It is the same if you look at it from a religion point of view, and if you look at it from a Christian point of view. When Christ was asked which law must be upheld, he basically stated the same. You must love your Creator with all your heart and all your mind, and the man next to you as yourself. So it presents care for the next person next to you. And it doesn't exclude them in terms of society, color, ethnicity, etc.
Okay. I believe that you are the shareholder at the South African Reserve Bank.
Yes, I am a shareholder.
How active are you with the South African Reserve Bank?
Well, I'm as active as I can be. There's no need to hide it that myself and the management of Reserve Bank does not sit around the same table. They don't want to speak with me because of what I've disclosed. And let us extend a little bit on law on this. And let me utilize simple examples. So, even though I may have had argumentatively the ultimate power, and I could generate a law at will. Can I generate a law that prevents you from breathing? Obviously not. So, and the legal principle behind it is it's res communis. It means that a property construct that is common to all may not be owned by an individual or an entity. Now, similarly, if the whole of humanity is dependent on the exchange of currencies in a financial system, it means that that property construct is also common to all because everyone is dependent on that, and it may not be owned by an individual or an entity, and utilize it as a weapon to withhold currency flow from groupings all over the world at will, which is happening today, and that is one of the things that needs to be corrected ASAP. That is the source of all the wars that we can recall for the last maybe 400 years, is the manipulation of the currencies. And it's done by one person or a small group of persons, and they involve societies that becomes destructive for all, which is against the common law.
Now, there's a writ that you initially shared with us, which is writ 111. Yes. Writ 111 that stipulates to the rule of nisi order. What is rule of nisi order?
A rule nisi order is an order where the evidence is presented to the perpetrators or presented to the people who has got an influence of correcting a illegal practice. Now, and that is a common thing in law, but if you don't respond within a specified time, you in yourself, you are in essence signing that you are the perpetrator. So that is an order that say to you, if you found yourself not guilty, respond within a certain period of time to show your innocence. If you don't respond, you have signed your own conviction.
Is it enforceable?
Of course it's enforceable. And maybe the best example is this one where in terms of section 33, 34, 38 and 39 of the Constitution, which allows for the removal of a government when it is proven that they are corrupt and is organized crime, which in this case happened, because the documentation was attached proving the government to be an organized crime organization with a racketeering agreement. Prior they're taking the office with an already existing organized crime from in the financial group, and every one of them had the opportunity to respond. As you can see, it was received by the President's office, by SARS, by the Department of Cooperation Government, and a few other departments, which is an extension of previous work done for the government by appointment of the government on being appointed as a forensic investigator on corruption, which is an appointment that still stands till today. And the reports being generated by that investigations was at the time in the era of President Zuma as the president of the country was intercepted and never been handed to him for his attention by the same organized crime gang present in government and in the government departments.
Okay.
If you look at the order of events, this taking over by the world by a small grouping that is in fact a sect in the financial world is coming for centuries.
Okay. Now, into this rate, you mentioned those influential people. Who are those influential people that we are referring to in this rich 111?
I cannot name them all because then it will take too long. But you have three important centers from where this organized crime is being planned and executed against humanity. Maybe the most important one is the Vatican.
Why the Vatican?
Well, if you look at the history of the Vatican, it came from Constantine, about 300 after Christ, where he could not win the movement of that was generated by the followers of Christ to care for one another. And then in a ploy to keep his governance in place, then he so-called made a pact with the followers and make it a state religion. But this state religion brought into quite a number of different things that was not part of the following of Christ. And following onto that, you see that from the beginning, people were forced to pay for forgiveness of sins, however sin was being presented to the people. So the Vatican was a bank from inception, but that utilized religion as his business plan. And therefore you'll find that there's approximately 1,388 versions of the Bible being under copyright with the Vatican. And on each and every one of those versions of the Bible you can link a war. So, and you also then later found that it was proclaimed by the later followers on, that is now still fresh in our minds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, and the Rothschilds, that they didn't make any beat about the bush, that they are funding both sides. So that means also that they are creating both sides to benefit them.
Now, in terms of clarifying that, we know that's the formation of these financial systems that were created now around the world. Now, you also mentioned in this read that the banks create, credit that they lend to citizens. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, let me just expand a little bit also on the Vatican. Next to the Vatican is the organization of the City of London, which is the financial hub of the world. And now the City of London, as a Vatican, is not part of Italy. And the City of London is not part of Britain. As also the military force of Washington DC is not part of America. Now, if you have wondered what Trump has meant by draining the swamp, it was a swamp in Washington DC. So what they were doing is, as is the same time, it's the same principle. They were extracting wealth from the public to fight the public. And that has happened with the Vatican, that has happened with the City of London, and that has happened with Washington DC. So, coming back to your question about credit, you'll find that in all the so-called mortgage loans, the actual currency that make the transaction possible is a property that has been brought forth by a potential buyer. Now the bank and the banks doesn't utilize some of their monies to fund this loan. It's just a book entry. So there's no fair exchange. So if I now for instance would have bought your car, you would expect me to pay currency that reflects some economic activity over some period of time as an equal or a fair value exchange. But that doesn't happen with the banks. the application for a loan is in fact being utilized to open another credit line for the bank against which they are trading. So you find that the person being by deceit, being forced into this mortgage loan, is in fact the funder of himself. But not only the funder, he is forced by deceit to pay interest over a period of time to an institution who has not contributed. And in that, if you make the calculations, at least over the time of repayment, he pays it 2 or 3 times. That same plus interest. So there's no fair exchange.
So are we saying, are you implying that in a nutshell, the banks, because they are the majority lenders, in the world, are you saying they're using an unfair advantage to indebt people?
That is true. That is also the statement of Morgan, Rockefeller and Rothschild, that war is the best creator of debt. So if you create a war, and it is on record that Rothschilds confirm that if the sons of the Rothschild doesn't want there to be a war, there will be no war. So by making that statement that is recognized worldwide as an official statement, it confirmed that their business is creating war.
Now, are you trying to say to
and the banks is exactly the same. And now you see the presence where the Rothschilds claim that they are the owners of the central banks, and the banks as a majority share owner with their wealth. It is automatically that it's been utilized to create wars. And some of the exposures and disclosures was dramatically about it, as you would recall Dr. Stephen Goodson, when he put it out on television that the farm murders was funded or orchestrated to be funded through the banks. Within 2 weeks he was dead of not a natural cause. And that is how they operated for centuries.
Okay. Now, bringing it to the perspective today, is that even the wars that we're experiencing today, like your war in Ukraine, your war in Israel and Pakistan, this war that is we just experienced now another takeover in Syria in the recent times. Are you saying all this chaos is created just to stabilize the financial system,
yes,
or to create movement of monies around the world? Because it's very important for us and our viewers to know that sometimes it's not every war that we must sympathize with. It's not every war that we must support, in the principle, the way it's presented to us.
Well, let me put it to you. You're not wrong in asking that question, but you can make it as a statement, a fact also. And let me give you a few examples from history of our own country in South Africa. Then, for instance, you have this Rhodes incursion into the daily operation of government in South Africa, where he basically, if I recall the dates correctly, he arrived in South Africa, was sent to South Africa in 1881. And then quickly thereafter he started in De Beers, a mining group with mainly concentrating on diamonds. But in his sending to South Africa, there was already a receiving party who was participating in diamonds, and it's just from the same grouping and the same sect. So in Kimberley initially, and that is also on the record, he then get some of the Khoi and the San people, buying tins around their necks, and let them collect diamonds for them, because at that stage their valuation of a diamond was, for them, it in essence meant nothing. But for him it meant a lot. Then he went back to Britain with a box full of diamonds. So, and what then happened in Britain, he was so-called educated further, and then he bribed the people of the Crown Company with these diamonds, and he then installed upon them a strategic view of the consolidation of Africa from Cape Town to Cairo under the control of the British. Now, there's a huge problem with that, because the general acceptance in law is the land belongs to the people who live in it. Now, who has given him that right? There's no law that has given him that right, and now in hiding this, they claim it to be politics. And politics has been funded mostly the people in the front of political parties by lobbyist groups, meaning people of interest. And if you now even go a little bit further back, you'll find that Lord Macaulay reported back into the British Parliament in, I think, 1835, where he stated that he has, in Africa, he has seen this amount of wealth, that there's no beggar, there's no one that is out of food. And he doesn't see that in the normal way of operation of the British, that they could break the back of the African people for their well-established value system, except if they continue with the process of making these people believe, which they in some way of their own fault see that what is ever British and foreign, because they have the technology and so that they can impress the people, is better than their own. And by that way, breaking the back of the African people and making them exactly what the British elites want them to be slaves to the system. And that is how they are materialized. And that's on the record. It cannot be nullified.
Yeah. Okay. Now, on the reach WW117, you mentioned the transfer of authority and distribution of leisure, of funds. What is that?
You see, in the design of this system, the world financial system, it was funded by the Alpha Omega Trust. And under the Alpha Omega Trust, the majority of the historical wealth and assets was accumulated, because that originated from the wealth of Solomon. Now, and you'll see that when you look at it in order of sequence and events over a long period of time, they plan, the same gang has planned to steal over all those assets. So, and they start with then with a huge buy-in of gold in 1912 from the Alpha Omega Trust, and after the First World War in 1930, the whole international community and the banks declared themselves bankrupt. Now, there's quite a few legal implications to that, and that happened in Geneva. First of all, when any company is being declared bankrupt, they should not be able to trade in shares, because then they trade on false presentations and for the seat of the people participating in that. Then it was funded by the Alpha Omega Trust again. And now you will see that the Alpha Omega Trust through the UCC then held the lien on all these assets. That is now also why the UCC is deliberately being kind of left out in the legal documentation for the people not to be aware or of the existence of the UCC, and also the perseverance and prominence of common law.
Okay. I want to link now the UCC with basically the Alpha Omega Trust. What is Alpha Omega Trust and who are the trustees?
Let me put it to you, the link between the Alpha Omega Trust and the UCC is that UCC is a universal law that encapsulates common law, natural law, or the creator's law, all at one. It grandfathers all other law and is still the only real law in the world. All the others are regulations and falsifications in essence. If you, for instance, take admiralty law, that is commonly practiced in all the courts throughout the world, it is by design been false, because it creates for you a straw man, which you are not. It basically assumes that you are dead, which you are not, and therefore you may not, as a dead person, may not present yourself in front of a judge or in court because you are dead. The judge cannot see you. Now, it doesn't. I do not want to dwell on it because that by itself can keep us busy a few hours, but it's factual. And it was designed by this gang, this generational criminal gang that is called the Eminent Persons Group, or in today's common language as the elites, or the cabal, or the deep state, or the swamp. Depends on which terminology you want to use, but in essence it's the same thing all over the world. The Alpha Omega Trust is a trust that holds the right to those assets for the benefit of humanity. Not for the benefit of a person in that trust, but for the benefit of humanity. It funded the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, and I will show you that even the documentation of the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944 is not being open to the public. Now, we had the discussion that for humanity to exist, they are dependent on trade and the exchange of value, which is supposed to be the banking system. Now, you cannot own it, and you cannot exclude people from participating or receive or exchange in that system because it's common to all. The property construct is common to all, the same as breathing. But the practice in the world is that it is so-called owned by people, which is not true, because the Rothschilds has deceived the people, making them believe that it is their wealth, and it's not. They are in fact bankrupt, as and today. And it is confirmed at the minutes of the Committee of 300, where they had ample time, if it was minuted wrong, to correct, because they were part of it. They were the asset managers of the Alpha Omega Trust at the time, which asset management agreement was terminated because of the fraud and the theft in 2016. And that is on public record, so they could have tried to put some other notion forward, which they didn't, because they cannot.
So when we refer to all these assets, are these the assets that are supposedly supposed to belong to the people?
It doesn't belong to the people, but the benefit therefore of these assets is assigned for the benefication of the people.
They belong to who?
The Alpha Omega Trust.
Okay.
But the total benefit therefore is for the benefit of the people of Earth, for all the groupings, all the countries, all the ethnicities, as a platform that funded the platform of the world financial system for the benefit of all.
If we may put it into today's context, you know, there are conspiracy theories that are going around saying the world has so much wealth that there is no human being that is walking in this planet Earth that should go to bed hungry. How true is that?
I think maybe 2000% true.
Wow.
Because I know from my own appointment, because I'm appointed as an executive of the Alpha Omega Trust to recover all this asset and to correct the system that the Rothschilds doesn't own it. The benefication of it belongs to all the people of the world. And if that benefication was available, there would not have been a necessity of a war in Ukraine against Russia, or in Israel, or in Sudan, or in the DRC, name it. And you will not have the necessity of, for instance now, the people of Honduras, Colombia, Mexico, Venezuela, who this funding was deliberately withheld from them, and they couldn't develop. So they are poor to the extent that you can imagine. But those funding was withheld for their development and to fund their development. So you see, the whole thing was planned on a macro scale. They create the situation that countries cannot look after their people by choking the flow of the money. And it's not theirs. That's why my function is to take back all the control of the wealth of the world back to the Alpha Omega Trust and to install a proper system that everyone benefit from it.
Okay. Now, that's going to bring us to your third writ that we came across, which is writ 00131, which is a writ that obviously speaks to the funds that you were recently trying to bring into South Africa. And there was then the challenges that you were facing. What is it that exactly because we see that you've written to the CEO of Standard Bank, you've written obviously to the Reserve Bank, you've written to all the state's institutions to try and intervene in this regard.
Yes, and maybe I should go back a few steps explaining to you. I didn't choose this position or this task for myself. When I was still responsible for much of the technology development in Armscor and Denel, and to a large extent many of the business establishment and technology establishment in Denel, from which I resigned in 2005. I was approached by many African countries to assist them in developing their countries. So the immediate question at that stage in our conversations was, how are we going to fund it? So, and the one thing Africa has plentiful is minerals, and that is naturally owned by the people who live in the country. Black's law. The land belongs, and everything in it belongs to the people who live in it. And everything that is in the ground, up into the sky to heaven, belongs to the people that lives in it. That's a column principle. So we agreed on establishing an alternative channel of marketing Africa's minerals, because the current marketing system was extorting all the wealth, prohibiting the development. And let me give you an example. And that is in Parliament been disclosed, so I can name the names. They had the chance to come forward with it or try to nullify it in any which way by whichever legal process, and they haven't, because they cannot. And they cannot afford to have me in court, because then it becomes automatic public record. So in that legal, and I'm saying it is a legal goal being presented by the people of Africa, that they want to fund their own and utilize their own assets for themselves to benefit themselves. So I was offered to start the alternative marketing channel with a parcel of diamonds of 8,534, if I recall correctly, which when they could sell it on, they would have achieved to the maximum $3.5 million for that parcel. But through alternative channels, I could have achieved 100 million for that same parcel. So what happened, because we only started at the time, I didn't have the infrastructure to verify all the necessities of verifying the funds, etc. So I did what I was accustomed to do in my role in Denel, as to create or to utilize an existing system that is doing that on your behalf. So I forced a escrow account structure for exchange of money for the actual goods, which was then presented by Old Mutual Bank, the escrow account managers. Now, in this process of an escrow account, when those kind of assets are being swapped for money, there has to be an asset management system that supports this transaction. Now, at the time, they then used the Absa Bank asset management system. But what I didn't know at that stage, and also the people which I represent, is that once that asset is entered into that system, it cannot exit. So if the other party default, you cannot exit it, which was arranged to be default. And it was arranged by persons in the Reserve Bank, in the bank office, with Old Mutual, with Nedbank, Tom Boardman, with, I can't recall the exact name of the persons involved in Old Mutual, but it was very senior people. So when I went to Zambia to conclude the transaction, I had to take possession of this parcel for handing it over in the escrow account structure. But when the money has to arrive, it did not. And whatever inquiry was put forward, there was not an answer coming forward. So in the end, what happens, that the Nedbank CEO, Tom Boardman, at the time, illegally so-called bought the bank guarantee that was linked to this escrow account, which is illegal because it's an existing, and it was offered to buy 49% in the Ateda pension fund in China. You must now remember that the banking supervisory function of Reserve Bank was at that stage still full in operation. So the Reserve Bank was, in terms of the legislation, responsible to see that that function being restored. And at the time it was Minister Trevor Manuel who was the finance minister. So in the exchange of correspondence, Minister Trevor Manuel instructed the Reserve Bank to act on it and to make it good, but they refused because it's an organized crime syndicate. Now, at that stage, I didn't know of all these crimes in the financial world and how it is basically stealing. There's no other word for it. Stealing all the assets from the people in countries across the globe which in any way cannot belong to them. It belongs to the people who live in the country. That is Black's law, and that's common law also. And as a result, then they refused to act, and it ended up with me being kind of in house arrest in Zambia, where the transaction was supposed to be concluded. And now I couldn't give back this diamonds because it entered in the Absa bank asset management system. So in the end, and the money was not coming forward, and they believed that I was busy with the corruption or with fraud. And so it then happened that one of the directors of the company with me was a former professor in law in Canada. Nephew came to Zambia, and from Nedbank, who was involved in the forensic investigation of what went wrong. And he then asked his family member, the professor, do you know about Natural Africa Minerals Limited? And he was switched on in his head, and he said, no, but tell me. Then he explained to him exactly what happened. And that caused my release, and I could return to South Africa.
Now, I want to bring us back to this writ 0013, where it's basically written in terms of the monies that were trying to be brought. But I see that there is disclosure of a name there of Miss Cornelia Gradenstein.
Yeah, it's really opportune for it to come forward now. Miss Cornelia is a co-director of Go New Earth.
Go New Earth.
Yeah.
What is Go New Earth?
Go New Earth is a company that was established locally to receive monies from abroad as foreign direct investment. It's been my brainchild. It's been communicated to the authority and the Reserve Bank, and I think in 2018 the disclosure was made to the Reserve Bank that we intend to bring in $500 billion to fund economic activities into South Africa and in Africa. And the reason why it's direct foreign investment is it was not supposed to have any, it's not a loan, there's no obligation on repatriating the funds back to the source, but that came all from the proceeds of the activities utilizing the Alpha Omega Trust wealth. She was involved in that.
Okay.
She also co-funded it.
She co-funded the operation, she co-funded, she was facilitating in terms of bringing those kind of resources into South Africa. Now, speaking to the recent transaction, the transfer that was made to Standard Bank, you mentioned in your reach that it came from UBS Bank.
UBS, yes.
And do you have proof of that the money did leave UBS Bank
yes.
into Standard Bank?
Yes, you in the documentation that is also attached there is a debit note against the account from which it is being released, with also the counter booking of the credit note that shows that it is being released.
And how much amount that we are?
That was 40 million euro.
Mm. So what then transpired after that?
Well, first of all, then they basically conspired not to receive the funding.
They claimed not to have received the funds.
No. It works because when money is sent from abroad, it's sent to the international server where that holds it as a currency to be downloaded.
Yes.
Then when the documentation was presented to Standard Bank, their first response was they couldn't see it. Then it was been in detail shown by procedure how you see it and how do you find it. It was presented to them. Then in their attempt not to receive it, they came with this bullshit statement, and sorry for the language, that the SWIFT agreement prohibit them from receiving euro from UBS Switzerland because it has to be sent in Swiss francs, which is really bull dust. The international payment system doesn't make provision for that bullshit. For being able to trade, you have to be able, as a reserve bank and also a bank that is trading in the international, to receive on whichever SWIFT mechanism being provided as an exchange.
The money leaves UBS and then it comes to Standard Bank South Africa, but it doesn't now reflect into Standard Bank's financial books.
That is where they manipulate this stuff. And believe me, I've been involved in investigations of several of them. There was also this incident where money was coming from abroad for the Nkuyama Trust, 500 million, which was confirmed by FNB at the time that it's been received, and confirmed that it's been received, but it never entered into the account of in the Nkuyama Trust. So I was asked to assist in the release of this funding, but until today it's not been released according to my knowledge. Then you find that within the system there were been people coming forward saying they will assist releasing the funds if you are willing to waive 30% of the funding for their own beneficiation, which is so wrong, because if you allow that, you now strengthen an illegal activity of a few persons. And you must understand, when I'm saying it is corrupt or it's fraudulent or it's thieving, it cannot be the Reserve Bank as an entity. It can only be the people working in the Reserve Bank or in a bank. So that is the other thing that we tend to, in terms of law and the application of law, is being misusing by deceit wrongfully. It is not Standard Bank who committed the fraud. It is people in Standard Bank. Similarly, the irregularities in the Reserve Bank is not the Reserve Bank per se. It is people in the Reserve Bank. So, in your application of admiralty law, you will now sue the Reserve Bank or Standard Bank. But they are not the perpetrators. So now you sit with a problem. When you go to the police for investigation, they refuse to open an investigation inquiry because they are being told not to do it from the highest office. And there you've got a perfect example of the 50B plus another $2 billion, that was linked to the same inquiry, which was instructed not to be investigated. And you can quote all the names on the senior police and the Hawks and Special Investigation Unit. They're all knowledgeable of that, but they are instructed not to investigate it or to bring it to a closure. So justice delayed is justice denied. So it is denied to allow a certain group or a certain grouping to steal all the benefit of this benefication.
In terms of now this 40 billion euros that was intended to come through to South Africa, what will be the actual that money was intended to do in this country? And do you have a mandate for those funds?
Oh yes. First of all, one must look at it that you don't need a mandate from a government institution to do that. Because, as I said, it is direct foreign investment. Now, if you also look at the Reserve Bank Act or the Banks Act, there is no prohibition of bringing funds into a country. The only thing is it has to be from a non-criminal region and it has to apply for a non-criminal goal or objective. Obviously, the authorities have the right, if that has been coming forth from a criminal region, to intervene and block it. But that is not the case. And it's not been earmarked for a criminal intent or objective. It's earmarked for funding economic activities at the lowest level of the economy. We are sitting in South Africa at the moment with the youth unemployment of 70%, I think, the recent figure. Now, if they are not employed, it shows you that there's an extreme poverty ratio. Now, why would you then blocking this funding from coming in to fund activities that provide for them? The only explanation for that is that there is a criminal gang who is capable of blocking the free flow of money, which is not allowed by any of the Reserve Bank Acts, not even by government, not even by Treasury. It's a function of the Financial Intelligence Center to verify whether this funds is coming from a criminal origin or not, but it did not come from it. And whether it's applied for a criminal intent, which cannot be, because I do have the mandates from the majority of the kingdoms in physical written mandates, which I can even show.
Are you referring to the South African kingdoms?
South African and Africa, you can see there's quite a lot.
Okay.
So and this, your traditional leaders and the people of the country is the owners of the property of the country. So who are this so-called fake authorities being waived in the formal state craft design that they have a authority to block funding coming in that is totally legal.
Okay. You mentioned that earlier on that it will not be the banks as the institutions themselves. If you, in this regard, Standard Bank as an institution, however, it will be individuals that are working or operating inside Standard Bank that will create all these challenges that basically they are blocking funding and finances to move freely in terms of developing the countries.
And let us not be focusing on Standard Bank alone, because it's not a Standard Bank only problem. It's every one of the banks. Okay. And it's every one of the central banks. It includes the World Bank. It includes the IMF. Okay. It includes the International Finance Corporation. It includes the Federal Reserve Bank, who's all been funded by the Alpha Omega Trust.
Okay. So I was trying to pin it to this 40 billion euros that was supposed to come in.
It's just another example.
Yeah, it's an example, but it becomes just frustrating and a painful thought to know that there were resources that were destined for the development of the country, in South Africa. Then you come across such challenges that you can't access these funds because now they are being blocked.
Well, it is more than frustrating. It is in fact high treason. Doesn't matter how you view it. It is high treason, and it's also genocide and democide by definition, because now funding that is available is being prohibited from entering to provide for these people a living by any standard that you want to utilize. Now, if people doesn't have access to a reasonable job or even an expectation of a job, how would you then justify the people dying of hunger in the country? The people dying of sickness linked to malnutrition. It's not that there's not a scope for development in the country. If the funding that was earmarked by the Alpha Omega Trust was applied at the time when it should, and you can, here is infinity account statement of the World Bank, and you can go to any account anywhere in any country in the world, and it will tell you exactly the same thing. Here, for instance, I just open arbitrarily at the page. Central Bank of the Shells, account number, there's a number with the account name of White Spiritual Boy, and standing balances of US dollars infinity. And with an account number that, with the account name Spiritual Wonder Boy. And with standing balance of US dollar infinity, confirmed as an eternal deposit. While on a time deposit, its principal balances and interest cannot be touched, and or loaned, and or programmed. What it in essence means, this statement, is it cannot be stolen. And if it's been stolen, there will be a recourse. That having a maturity rate of 4% per annum, and per 30 years of maturity, and upon maturity, 50% shall be forcefully, for whatever development program, and 50% shall be automatically and forcefully maintained and persevere for another 30 years until lasted for eternity. Now, if you do the calculations of what is being required by that statement, and that is all the banks all over the world that was funded to continue when they declared bankruptcy, it means that after 30 years, if you have got now, for instance, say, a balance of 100 Rand, to keep it simple, after an investment period of 30 years, you will have at least, when you apply 50% of the balance at that stage, you will have now a comparative balance of at least, in the very at least, of 120% of the initial investment been going forward, not been applied. So, where was this money being applied in South Africa and the world between the period from when it was supposed to received until where it was supposed to be released? It was received in most countries on the 1st of January 1966. Between 1966 and 1999. Where is it applied? Now, the balance on the 15 in 2015 in the Standard Bank account, which I do have a copy of, at that stage was over $600 trillion, backed by gold. Now, if you go back and say, but it should have been less in the 1st of January 1997, when it became eligible for development funding. Where is such funding?
As in the banks.
Why wasn't it applied? It was a trust instruction, and that application is the rightful benefit of the whole people of the country, not by the shareholders of Standard Bank or the Reserve Bank. Where is it?
So clearly, it's going to demonstrate that various banks, like you've indicated earlier on, that they are involved with the managing and handling of these funds. You mentioned that you had done your forensic investigation, and 2015 there were 200 metric tons of gold that was within Standard Bank. I see this document here. Now, I just want now to find out for our viewers' clarity here, to say, how then do we enforce these rates so that all these things come into light now to ordinary citizens?
Your problem that we have is that whether we want to believe it or not, and I'm not here now to claim for the death of quite a lot of people, even in the banks, because those people who are participating in this atrocity, most of them are also deceived. Most of them. But there has to be a time coming forward and say, no more. Because we are, as a result of this, we are forced into a situation of scarcity where the world population is going to fight one another for survival, and it will end in a nuclear war situation.
Now, if you say they are deceived, are they sat down and explained to, and then they are told that no, however, you must operate in this way?
The system was set up to be corrupt from the beginning. That is why, from the Bretton Woods Agreement that was concluded in 1944, the majority of that evidence is still not released. And I can show it to you. And maybe I should. And that was downloaded for me by me recently. And by the way, if you here see what I've earlier stated about the Morgans, the Rothschilds, and the Rockefellers. Here it is. It's public knowledge. Now, how do we, as a population and the government representing the population, still enforce this bullshit?
So it cannot be enforced?
No, they are enforcing it. But to the detriment of the people.
No, they are enforcing it. So yes. The system that we are currently using around the world, it's a system that obviously we are working with, that was enforced by this organization or these individuals.
Let me show you. Here is a video that was available of the Rothschilds exercise control over the Vatican. And it's a Pope kissing their hands and bowing down and kissing their feet. So who's in control of the Vatican? The religion, Christ, which they claim to be, or the Satanist, that is the Rothschilds? Who?
So the Pope is bowing down to the Rothschilds.
Which confirmed that there was a bank from the beginning, and by deceit claimed to be a church, and utilize versions of religion, including Islam.
Okay. Now, having put all of this into perspective, Adriaan, what is it now that you would like to achieve and you would like to see happening, out of this disclosure? Because for me, this is mind-boggling, and I'm sure with our viewers and ordinary citizens, it's quite, mouthful to comprehend, to say how interlinked is the system, how the system works, how the system blocks us from functioning as normal as possible as people. So what is it that you seek that could be put forward?
What I've said about the Bretton Woods Agreement, and you can see all those documents not released. All of them. Now, that is since 1944. Now, how is it possible that a government representing the people, supposed to forward the interest of the people, is not addressing this? That's why I'm saying to you, they are all being deceived. But there is now a time where the claim of I've been deceived doesn't stand any longer. That is my function. That's why I've disclosed it worldwide. That is the reason why I was appointed as an executive of the Alpha Omega Trust to recover these funds, making these disclosures. And you can go on, there's quite a lot. The same situation happened in, that is linked to our so-called apartheid wars, and it was never been something coming out of the societies. It was a banking system implementation. It was created and funded, and even the publications, the press, was funded in a way so it promoted that at the time. Not for the interest of the people, to everyone's detriment. That is why you see today as much impoverished white people in squatter camps as black people. And it was never a thing, a racial thing. It was the mechanism and the strategy of being implemented way back when it was stated that we will not make gains of war visible by taking it as territory gain, but we will take it in the financial system as financial gain.
Now, if I may just ask for you to be as bold as possible, just to put out the message out there, to say, this is the plea that we are asking from this department, this sector, this department, these offices, that offices, in order for us to be able to find the closure or progress into this program. Because clearly this program has been going for a very long time without any success in terms of what. So my fear with that is that it might get to ordinary citizens around the continent, around the globe, and now you find a situation where there's a revolt basically amongst the people.
You see, the intent of the disclosures was to inform the people that they stand together and enforce what is right in a peaceful way. That is also why you see in all the mandates being received, it was confirmed to all the participants that we will keep peace at all cost. Because what our opposition wants is to have a situation of civil war. And if you are in a position of civil war, it's everyone for himself, for his own survival. And it will prohibit any meaningful disclosures and action being implemented. So the education of the public is of paramount importance, not only in South Africa, throughout Africa and the world. Those benefications being held illegally off ledger in the banks and in the financial system, the World Bank and the Feds, etc., doesn't matter. And you yourself has mentioned that there is so much money being stashed away that in 1,000 years, if you gave significant salaries to people, it will not be depleted. It's factual, it's true. That's why I'm saying it is 2,000% the truth.
Yeah. So in essence, we are just, this disclosure, it's for people to know this information, and maybe people start mobilizing themselves, or how then do they get to act on this information that has been disclosed?
Your problem is people without having the proper information is easily being channeled into believing false narratives and easily influenceable by false narrative. But knowing that the facts, it put them in a position to engage in a meaningful manner and to take back what belongs to them. That is exactly what was, you can say, the major support of President Trump in the USA. We are supposed to be a government by the people, for the people. And it's no different in South Africa. The government and the financial institutions should be there for the benefit of the people, because the benefication that has funded them was there for the benefication of the people, not for a few secluded persons.
As we say in IT World Network, that it is news for people, by people. So it's people getting out there, getting this news. Now, do you think now that ordinary citizens, we know that they are most of the time influenced by the political party system? Don't you think then maybe this disclosure needs to go direct to the political parties around the continent and around the world?
Well, that is exactly what RIT 131 was. It was disclosed to everyone that is supposed to take action in Parliament, as you yourself have seen. It's not that I have tried to hide it. Nothing in law, nothing should be hid. And now you see what is the effect of being the hidden history and the documentation and the agreements being made behind closed doors of as far back as the illegal bankruptcy being called by the whole world community in 1930. It was designed by the eminent persons group, or the deep state, or the elites, or the swamp. And it doesn't matter which you align to it, because those people has got a lot of footmen working together by being paid or being bribed to do that.
In your closing remarks, what information and what will be your plea to the ordinary citizens of South Africa and of Africa and the world?
Well, it's first to acquaint them that this wealth is there for their benefit, and they claim it in a peaceful way, because we cannot allow it to spill over into a revolt or in a civil war. Because what will then happen is, because this organization has utilized the public funding to strengthen their own armies, you will direct your own money against yourself. That is where now unity is so important for humanity to say, but we are humanity. It belongs to us. Give it to us.
So it's for ordinary citizens of the country and the countries to organize themselves so that they can be able to know what to do and what to engage, because it's detrimental that they do get full disclosure of these assets and all these funds that have been withheld to them. But it requires a peaceful approach to basically together that.
Exactly, Mandla, but also linked to that, they must acquaint themselves with the knowledge thereof. Otherwise they cannot engage, and it's easy to distract them. But if you have the knowledge of it, and you make it your own, it's not that easy to distract you from it. And as I said, there's a lot of people that participate in the destruction of humanity, even our legal system. And when you disclose this to some of the people, they realize that they are being captured in a deceitful system. Now, what are they doing? They are dependent for a living out from that system. So the only way out is to say there has to be a cut-off date, no more. And we're going to rectify it for the benefit of all. But that crooked legal system cannot operate beyond that. And that crooked financial system cannot operate behind it. That is why there's quite a lot of talk about the so-called quantum financial system that will replace the banks. But everyone that has illegally benefit is trying to position themselves now strategically in that quantum financial system, that they are still in control.
So you hear it, Africa, that you just need to empower yourself in terms of knowledge and understand this information. We will also try to do our best to share this information with our viewers and ordinary citizens, around the continent and around the world, so that they are acquainted themselves with this information. But it just in closing, for me, it takes, it is a mammoth task for you to investigate all of this information together. How are you funding this serious and huge operation?
Well, Mandla, I've spent everything I have. because it comes to the position where we're either going to save humanity or we're going to be killed. In terms of this eminent persons group or the elites or the cabal, whatever, they intend to only have a remaining population of 500 million. At present, we are, I think, around 8.2 billion people on planet Earth. So if you are not invited to that group, you are at risk. So make your own decision. And I hope you do it informed and with a view of leaving an inheritance for your descendants, which is a function of the Alpha Omega Trust, which the system was created to be operated in that way, but was hijacked by the Rothschilds and the Morgans and the Rothschilds, Rockefellers.
You hear it Africa, you hear it South Africa, you hear it Africa, you hear it around the world, that it is in your hand what you do about it. It is very important that you acquaint yourself and you empower yourself as much as possible in order for you to be equipped and be empowered to be able to basically take this challenge. It's a moment task that is before us as citizens of the world to be able to assist it. We commend people like Adriaan Rudolph Fondse that are fighting this struggle, that are fighting this battle. But it is important that we assist as well where we can in terms of making sure that this truth comes out. Your duty now as the viewer of IG World Network is for you to take this information and share this information with your people that are around you so that you empower yourselves to be able to have conversations that are meaningful. As you will know, we've been saying in this channel that the political system might be failing us. However, there are men and women that are out there that are coming out with the truth that can assist us in terms of really getting into our true liberation in the, not only in South Africa, not only in the African continent, but in the world. As you've said, Adriaan Fondse, just mentioning a very important thing, that there is an agenda of depopulating people, that in no time we should be moving away from being 8 billion people odd in the world, but into just 500 million odd people. That is insane to think about that. But we say, as the channel, that you continue watching our stories so that we can be able to inform you more with our stories. Don't forget to subscribe and share this interview and share this link as far as you can to our networks and your networks around the world so that we can be able to share this information with everyone. For now, Africa, for now, South Africa, for now, the world, we are signing off and we are saying thank you very much, Mr. Adriaan Rudolph Fondse. And next time we will be able to share this more insight on the stories, and hopefully there will be progress on your investigations and the work that we are doing out there.